Welcome to Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
And my name's Justin.
And my name's Mike. Today we'll be going over what's on our minds, followed by a feature review of Marvel's Avengers Infinity War.
Yep, and if you want to let us know what you thought about Infinity War, or follow along with what we're going to be watching next, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, or you can join our Facebook group where we talk TV, film, and other stuff at facebook.com/groups/casualcinecast, or you can email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
All right, gentlemen.
So who wants to go first for what's on our mind?
I'll go first. I watched a Western, because every time a good Western comes out, or even a bad Western, I usually try to give it some attention, because I do love Westerns. And it's called Hostiles. It was written and directed by Scott Cooper, and it came out earlier this year starring Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike. Have you guys seen this movie, or heard of this movie?
I have done neither of those things.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. I'm excited, though, to see what you say about it, see whether I should watch it or not.
I would say so. If you like Westerns, definitely give it a shot. So basically, this is about an army captain basically has to escort a Cheyenne chief and his family through Native American territory from like a different tribe who's more hostile. And so this soldier who's basically made a whole career of killing Native Americans and hating them has to work together for survival to get through the territory and complete his duty, you know? And along the way, they meet Rosamund Pike, who's just undergone a tragedy of her own. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's really good. Scott Cooper, I mentioned, directed it, and he actually has directed Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges.
Okay, I like that movie.
And a funny story, when I was watching Hostiles, I actually realized that Ryan Bingham, the singer who wrote the song for Crazy Heart that was nominated for the Academy Award, or maybe even won Academy Award, I can't remember.
I think it did win, yeah.
I think it did, yeah. Well, anyway, he's actually in the movie in one scene where they're like sitting around the campfire, and he's like singing them a song. And I was like, that voice sounds familiar. Sure enough, I found out that this is the same director as Crazy Heart, which is good. And yeah, anyway, that doesn't really have anything to do with Hostiles. But if you like Westerns, definitely give it a shot. It got pretty decent reviews, but it kind of came out in the beginning of the year when there's really not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like they were trying to push for Oscars, and it kind of just got looked over by Oscars.
Yeah, probably. It's not good enough for any of that. I don't know. It's a thoughtful, nicely paced Western. So give it a shot if you are so inclined. What about you, Chris? What have you been up to this week?
So this week, I watched Escape from New York for the first time. It's the 1981 movie by John Carpenter starring Kurt Russell and Lee Van Cleef. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's, especially now, it's the perfect Sunday, like the lazy Sunday movie that you watch. I really enjoyed it. It was lots of fun. I kind of wish there had been a little bit more from Kurt Russell, it's kind of an Indiana Jones type character.
Be careful here, Chris.
I know. But it's kind of like an Indiana Jones type character, and like if they had to just push something a little bit further with him. I think Kurt Russell's really good, but there wasn't really that memorable moment that he had during the movie. And if you feel that I'm wrong, you can explain the moment.
Yeah, I feel you're wrong.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So what was the memorable moment that you have from the movie?
I mean, the end is really memorable. Call Me Snake is memorable.
Yeah, actually, when Justin and I were talking about that earlier, that was the one thing. Call me Snake. And then at the very end, he's like, call me Pliskin.
Yeah.
And he changes his mind. Make up your mind, Snake.
And I don't know, he's doing his best Clint Eastwood right here.
Yeah, that's what...
You know, it's just badass. I don't know. I think you're just...
I wouldn't
wrong
disagree with
flying
you.
Colors.
I wouldn't disagree with you. I think it is badass. But I think if it had just been a little bit more, it would have been a better movie.
That's it. We're fighting.
We're fighting.
We're
a little bit more badassness, a little bit more humor. What specifically?
Like something that's just a little bit more memorable, or like a line or something that he has, like a Dirty Harry type thing, or even the Man with No Name Clint Eastwood thing.
So like a we're gonna need a bigger boat, or
something. And it doesn't have to be a line, but just there wasn't that thing, that memorable moment for me that cemented this as a great film. You know, it was a good film that I enjoyed watching.
Yeah, earlier when we were talking about this, I was saying that I think he'll really enjoy Escape from LA based on that description and opinion on Escape from New York. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking that when he was talking. I was like, if he's looking for cheesy, memorable, fun action, I think Escape from LA is a lot more self-aware. Or maybe not self-aware, it's not the right word, but it's a lot more of that and embracing that aspect of action movies.
And I could definitely see if I had seen this as a kid, like this being one of my favorite movies, But since I hadn't, it's just not quite there, so. But I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, fuck you.
And fuck you.
Just kidding. I'm sorry.
And that's the final word, I think.
Yeah. The podcast is over.
No, but I'm super jealous you got to see that in a movie theater.
Oh, I didn't see it in the movie theater.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Oh, I saw it. I'll cut that out.
Yep.
Where did you see it?
Just at home on Amazon Prime.
Boring.
What made you decide to want to watch it?
I've realized over the last couple of weeks that I haven't seen a lot of John Carpenter films, and I want to correct that. So I'm going to start doing more John Carpenter, I think.
Oh, sweet. What's next?
I think probably Escape from L.A. Is going to be the next one, and then we'll just go on from there. I do really want to watch The Thing.
Have you not seen The Thing?
No, I haven't.
Have you seen Halloween?
I have. Halloween I've seen, but it's been so long, I'll probably watch it again just to kind of catch up on it.
Good call.
Yeah, next week we should just make an episode on The Thing so he has to watch it as soon as possible.
Yeah, deal.
Done.
You're going to see a lot of movies that have been since inspired by The Thing, and a lot of TV shows, like a lot of bottle episodes have been inspired by The Thing. I am interested to see kind of if you think it holds up seeing it on your first viewing, now that I know for a fact you've seen a lot of stuff that's been based on it, or inspired by it for sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Close quarters, paranoia kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know who to trust. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, me too. So, Justin, what have you been watching?
So last night I was up, bored, and just kind of combing through movies I had available to watch, and then I came across this film that someone had recommended to me probably like 2 years ago, and I had never watched it, but they told me that I would really like it and that I would be super into it. I think we were actually like talking about Godard films at the time and like things I liked about Godard. And he was like, oh, you have to watch this film. And that film was Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which came out in 2015. It was directed by Alfonso Gomez Rejon. And it was, I guess, based on a book written by Jesse Andrews. And he also wrote the screenplay. Have either of you guys seen this movie?
I haven't. I heard a lot about it when it first came out, and I never really got around to it. How about you, Mike?
No, I haven't seen it either. I'm sad to say. Was it good?
Yes, I thought it was very good. I would highly recommend it, especially for the film nerd like ourselves. I guess I'm calling you guys film nerds and myself. I don't know if you would agree.
How dare you, sir?
I'm offended.
Yeah.
No, not really. What's it about?
So it's about a kind of socially awkward kid in his senior year of high school who has a friend named Earl, and he's kind of avoided making very many good friends. Like, he doesn't even call Earl his friend. He calls him his coworker because they make films together. And so his mom has a friend who has a daughter that's his age who is diagnosed with leukemia, and his mom forces him to go and hang out with her and go visit her because she feels bad. And so he does, and they develop like a friendship over this like senior year of high school together, where she's not in school, she's going through chemotherapy, all the stuff you would expect with a character with cancer. But it's the way that it's shot and the things that it does are like very, very quirky and offbeat and inventive. Like, a lot of the camera work is really interesting and like, I guess, kind of reminiscent of some of like the French New Wave attitude towards filmmaking that I really enjoyed. And also, for the film nerd part of it, is that the main character, Greg, and Earl are both very into film. So like throughout the movie, they're watching things like Burden of Dreams and Fitzcarraldo and 400 Blows. And the movies that they make together, they do these really silly parodies of classic like foreign cinema, basically, or it's not necessarily foreign, I guess all kinds of like American cinema too, but they'll take the title and they'll do a pun with it and then just make it very, very silly. And like like the one I could think of like, that they're making of off the top of my head, even though there's like dozens of examples in the movie, is they do a remake of Apocalypse Now, but they call it A Box of Lips Wow, and it's about a guy who finds a box of tulips and is very impressed. So it's like very, very silly stuff like that. It's not the best example of things they do, but that are really funny with film. But it's certainly it's a dramedy. I think the biggest actor in it is Nick Offerman, who was Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. He plays the main character's dad. But otherwise,
is he like the same like manly man character as he always is?
No, he's actually totally different. He has a pretty close shaven beard, which is kind of interesting to see, and he's kind of this hippie dad who makes a lot of like exotic and foreign food and is very much into art film, which is I think how the boys get their interest in art film from him.
That sounds like an interesting thing to see him play.
It definitely is. It's a different role for him, even though he's kind of minor.
It also has Olivia Cooke in it, who was also in Thoroughbreds that Mike and I have seen.
And Ready Player One.
Oh, is it Olivia Cooke in Ready Player One?
Yeah,
she's
is the main girl.
Yeah, that's where I recognized her from. I knew she looked familiar, but I also like have a friend who kind of looks like her, so I thought that was just coming from my friend, you know, and not Ready Player One. So yeah, check it out. You guys should both watch it. I think you will both like it, and I think if you're really into film, you will like it. I think it's made so interestingly that I've heard there are a lot of people that don't like it, and I think when you make a film with as like many risky choices as this one, you're bound to be kind of polarizing, you know?
Yeah, I remember when it first was released, there's a lot of glowing reviews, and then there's kind of, just like any time on the internet, there's a bunch of backlash that came with the movie, so I wasn't sure exactly.
Yeah, it felt like the kind of movie that we would have loved that when it came out at Blockbuster and would have recommended to like all the people coming in, and then the people would have brought it back and be like, what the hell is this movie? Like, what? This movie was awful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that happened a lot.
So then the only other things I really watched was 2 films that I watched to get ready for seeing the movie that we're going to talk about here in a bit, Avengers Infinity War. And those were Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I watched these because I had multiple friends who saw Infinity War before I did immediately message me because I guess one of them being you, Mike, and the other one, you know, kind of knows my history of Marvel films and immediately was like, hey, you should watch Doctor Strange and maybe Guardians 2 before you see Infinity War.
Yeah, probably a smart move.
Yeah, it feels smart now. Like, I'm certainly really glad that I watched both of those, especially Doctor Strange, I think.
Yeah, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on maybe why I personally texted you that, which is just because I imagine if you've seen Infinity War, by now you're probably listening to this, but just in case you haven't, there are things that are concepts that happen that I feel like may have been out of left field if you had not seen Doctor Strange before, and it would have seemed like a Deus Ex Machina type situation, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been completely out of left field on some of those things, or you think it would have been something that they're introducing for the first time, and it would be pretty lame
if you didn't know that was an option on the table from the beginning.
Yeah.
Exactly, and we'll go in more to that into spoilers, but I'm sure anyone who's seen the movie knows exactly what we're talking about.
Yes, and I guess just to briefly talk about him, I actually really, really liked Doctor Strange. Like, it's very high up there in terms of like my ranking of Marvel movies.
Oh, nice. That surprises me.
Yeah, I didn't expect necessarily because it seemed like a lesser movie. Like, I don't remember people talking a lot about it when it came out or, you know, hearing a lot of praise for it. But I guess it's, you know, it's not as big as like Avengers or Captain America movies.
No.
So it doesn't get quite the buzz.
Well, and I think at that point, people who keep up with the MCU pretty regularly weren't interested in another origin story. So I think that has a lot to do with it too. Whereas you were saying in our Marvel episode last week that you actually appreciate the origin stories maybe more than when they're in full hero swing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things I liked about it. It was the journey that Doctor Strange goes on from being a kind of asshole-ish, conceited
and
dude.
He's a big asshole at the beginning of the movie too.
Yeah.
There's one scene where he's such a dick to Rachel McAdams' character.
Yeah, exactly. And he's, you know, like overly cocky but then he has to go through like this sort of like losing his hands and then go through like a Zen sort of education in order to harness the powers that he eventually gets. So like that's like a really big character transformation, which I really like that sort of thing. And on top of that, I thought the side characters were really good. Like the guy who's like the big Asian librarian, Wang. Is his name Wang or Wong?
Wong, and the actor's name is Benedict Wong. Is that right? Hang on.
I think that is right because I think I saw that before and thought that was funny.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I thought he was really great. Like his whole like shtick and rapport with Benedict Cumberbatch is really good. And then I don't know, I never know how to say his name, but Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
That guy is. I thought he was really good in it, and what was going on with his character as far as like. I assume I can spoil this, right?
Go for it.
But
if you haven't seen it, skip ahead.
Yeah, skip ahead about maybe 20,
And
30
stop
seconds.
listening to the Infinity War podcast.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but he goes through this idea of being fully invested in believing like all of this stuff, and then he finds out that the leader of them, who's played by Tilda Swinton, she is harnessing dark energy and dark power in order to be as powerful as she is, and he's very conflicted about that.
She's a big old hypocrite.
Yeah. And I just that sort of thing is very interesting to me. And then in general, the visuals of that movie are great. Like all of the action set pieces where they're making portals and then they're bending like the space around them and changing the layout of things as they're fighting or running around. Like I just found that like visually very satisfying.
I'm right there with you. I would be 1,000 times more interested in any Doctor Strange sequels now that we're past the origin story element. I did want to mention real quick before we move on that at the end of Doctor Strange, Dan Harmon actually had to come in and write the final showdown with the main villain at the end of that movie.
Interesting.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Yeah. Since you brought up the villain, I think that is the worst part about the movie. I think the villain is pretty like ordinary and kind of boring.
It's
like,
true,
I don't think
but
they did
the
much.
way that it's true, but the way they resolve it is more interesting than a city being destroyed. The end of that movie is actually kind of like an anti that. It's like the city being put back together, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. I just think like as far as like I don't
who
know
he
if it's
is and what he's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, his motivation and maybe even the performance, because it's Mads Mikkelsen, right? Who's the bad
that
guy.
villain. I was just talking about like the villain at the end where he goes to that planet and he traps that god in a time loop.
Oh, right. Yeah. That part I was kind of okay on. Like it was interesting, I guess, but like as far as like
that's the Dan Harmon part I was talking about. Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen was just a standard mustache twirler in this one.
Yeah. So yeah, but
although
other than
I did
that,
like the
really
joke about his name where he's like, "It's strange." He's like, "Maybe, but who am I to judge?"
Yeah. That's like the best thing he did was like that little quippy line, but that was funny. Anybody else could have had that line too. Like,
yeah,
the librarian could have had it.
All right. What about Guardians?
But
2?
yes, Guardians 2, I was not as big on. I didn't like it that much. I enjoyed Kurt Russell in it because I always enjoy Kurt Russell, unlike Chris, who hates him apparently.
yeah. Kurt Russell's awesome.
Yeah, I think he's great in that movie.
Yeah, but not Escape from New York for some reason.
And he was great in that too. I just think that all right.
But yeah, basically my big problem with Guardians 2 is I felt like they took all of the things that people really liked about the first Guardians and then tried to double down on them and do them even harder and even bigger and even better. And some of it felt either too repetitious or too much like I'd seen it before, or it just didn't work because it wasn't like subtle enough humor. Particularly, I'm thinking of everything they did with Drax in Guardians 2 was like really unbearable to me, and he was one of my favorite parts of the first Guardians. And
I hear what you're saying. In that sense, I think Drax isn't as funny in the second one. I don't think as much of the humor is as successful as it was in the first one, but I would say that the parts that do work are still there. I think the hit-miss ratio for me is a little more even. I would say it's probably 50-50 for me. I think Drax's humor works a lot of the times. It just needs to be toned down a bit and trimmed down because I feel like not every punchline needs to go on for a minute.
Right. And I think what works best for me for Drax, like as we'll also talk about this in regards to Infinity War, but definitely in like the first Guardians, is that he's often the butt of the joke and doesn't realize it. And that's funny, right? Ebert has this line about comedy and comedy films, and that like a person who's wearing a funny hat is only funny if they don't know that their hat is funny. If they're aware that they have a goofy hat on, that's not particularly funny. And I felt like they were super aware of that, of how funny Drax was in the first one, and tried to amp it up in the second one, and had to have him make the jokes. Like they didn't quite nail it the way they did in the first one. I think he needs to be the butt of the joke all the time. That's where he's best.
I really love the line, "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all." You know, what was the line?
Oh yeah.
How does that go?
Yeah. It's the blue guy, right?
Right.
I don't remember the character's name.
Yondu.
Yeah. When he's going down, they're like, "You look like Mary Poppins," and then he's like, "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all."
He's like,
that was great.
Is he cool? And it's like, hell yeah, he's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That moment I really liked, and I guess there's a lot of interesting things as far as like everybody has this big family dynamic, and I kind of liked the ultimate like tone that it left off on of like
exactly
of like your friends or your family. and sometimes,
Exactly. And I think the Guardians movies, the humor doesn't always land for me, but what I think is appealing is they have a dynamic that a lot of the Marvel movies don't, which is this, foster family dynamic, And I appreciate the themes of like one's own self-destructive asshole behavior is the only thing stopping you from being happy with your new pseudo family,
Mm-hmm.
So I like that a Marvel movie actually kind of addresses that self-destructive theme, like with Rocket's story and even Peter's, So I don't know. I think the Guardians movies have a lot more to say than a lot of Marvel movies. So even when the humor doesn't land, I don't know. I feel like they work a little more and I'm a little more generous to them because of that fact. They have a lot of heart,
Yeah, and I think that's what makes me like the movie more than I think I otherwise would.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
that last 30
barely
minutes is
remember
pretty
what's
great.
going on.
Or not even the last 30 minutes. The last 10 minutes, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah. So it just leaves off on a very good point. So I think I liked it more than I would have otherwise, but I still just, for the most part of the movie, I was like not enjoying it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I like the first one way better, but I think I like it a little more than you. But what else is new when it comes to these movies?
Yeah, for sure. That's it for me. So you guys ready to talk about this Avengers movie we all saw?
What movie?
Infinity War.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw something like that this weekend.
All right, let's move on.
Okay.
The entire time I knew him, he only ever had one goal. To wipe out half the universe. If he gets all the Infinity Stones, he can do it with the snap of his fingers. Just like that.
Tell me his name again.
Thanos.
All right, so first of all, we're going to do a non-spoiler review, and then we're going to dive deeper in with spoilers. So we'll give you ample warning so that you can turn off your podcast and go watch Avengers, and then come back and listen to the rest of the review. So, Mike, what were your thoughts?
All right, so Avengers Infinity War was directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, who got their start on, TV shows like Arrested Development, Community, things like that. The synopsis from IMDb says, the Avengers and their allies must be willing to sacrifice all in an attempt to defeat the powerful Thanos before his blitz of devastation and ruin puts an end to the universe.
That's mostly right, I think.
Yeah.
And he's not going to put an end to the entire universe.
Yeah, I think that, but maybe they didn't want to hint too much at what might happen,
But well, I mean, it's his plan that he's got is in the trailer, so I don't know if that
Is it?
did we spoil it? Yeah, in the
That's
trailer.
true. Yeah, Gamora.
In the trailer, he says, "I'll be able to snap my fingers and destroy half of existence."
No, Gamora says it. She's like, as long as I knew him, he only ever had one goal. But yeah, it's said in the trailer. Whatever, IMDb, you suck at that synopsis. But
irrelevant, probably. I just wanted to point it out.
Good call. Way to keep everyone in line. So my overall thoughts, I would say this is a movie that only really works as a finale to a series so far. I mean, technically the first half of a finale. It does not really work as a standalone movie at all. That might seem really obvious to people, but I feel like we need to state it up top. As a finale, I'd say it mostly succeeds. It's a much grimmer tone than all of the MCU so far, I would say. There is a lot of humor sprinkled throughout the movie to try to, counter that tone. Some of it worked for me, some of it didn't. I think I admire this movie quite a bit for its boldness. I don't know if I've ever really seen a major blockbuster movie that, although I don't think anyone believes the ending is quite the ending, and I'm being vague, I think that it's still ballsy on Disney's part to put something with this kind of tone out there. Especially considering it's the biggest movie ever, with all the cast and the budget behind it and everything. It just seems like a really ballsy move. There's certain things that I hope that they did in this movie that I hope stick, because I think if certain things are undone in the fourth one, it could very well make this one less good in retrospect. But yeah, as a whole, I'd say it's successful. It's not as good as the first Avengers because, that was the first. But I'd say it's easily in the top third of the Marvel movies for me. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of those points. I think that this is one of the best adaptation of a comic book, like especially a crossover. When I was a kid, I read the Superman Dies timeline, and there's so many different characters that I didn't know that kind of crossed over into this world, and it really reminded me of reading that comic book because there's so many characters that are crossing over and entering into this world that it's really remarkable that it flows as well as it does. They balance those characters really well, I think.
Yeah, and I guess real quick before we get too into this, I think it's probably important to note that none of us are really big comic book readers. So we don't come from this from a place of knowing a whole lot about the Marvel comics, you know?
Right. However, I think that you are right. I don't know that this works as a independent movie whatsoever. It really works more along the lines of a great finale of a TV show, you know, where you have to have watched and seen the things before it, which makes it more fun, I think, in fact. I really love the pairings of a lot of the characters that they put together. They really chose the right characters to have join up together. Yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. What do you think, Justin?
For you guys' main points, I definitely agree. I think without the other films, without having seen the other films and been familiar with them, I think this movie will be less enjoyable for you. And so I'm super glad that I watched, like I talked about earlier, Doctor Strange and Guardians 2 at like the final moment, you know, like the day before I went to see Infinity War. Because if I hadn't, I think there were things that would have either been confusing, and if not confusing, they would have been silly to me or made me roll my eyes, right?
Or might have felt cheap or like something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Going beyond that, I think the movie works really well in terms of balancing everything that's going on, because there's basically like 3 or 4 different things going on at least throughout the entire movie, sometimes more than that. That was pretty well balanced. I didn't feel that anything was short-shrifted.
I feel like
Is
Cap
that the
was
word?
short-shrifted.
Do you really?
I do. There was not nearly enough Cap in this movie. Too much Thor, not enough Cap. That's my main complaint, but that'll come.
Yeah, I do have there's an entire scene, like the whole like section of the story that Thor does that I think it should be gone entirely. But we can get into specifically what that is later. And so basically none of the superheroes get developed. And I think that's part of what wouldn't work if you hadn't seen the other movies, is that you get no development at all, basically, of any of the major like good guys, even the minor good guys. Did you guys feel that way?
I think I would for the most part, but I think there's 1 or 2 characters that get a little bit of development. I think Iron Man, maybe a little bit, or
I would say Iron Man,
Doctor Strange.
Bruce Banner gets a little bit of development. Bruce Banner is in the middle of an arc right now that's going on over like Thor Ragnarok, this movie, and I assume the next one with like his Hulk dilemma. You know, like he and Hulk have issues to work out, he says.
Well, so yeah, I mean, maybe it's pretty minimal, I think. Like
you're right.
To the other movies.
You're right. Like Cap gets nothing to do. You know,
but and I think that's okay. I think that's okay because, as you guys said, it works like a finale of a TV show. And we've had all that done for us, but what we do get a lot of is the development of Thanos' character. And I want to say that I don't think you guys ever said, but like I actually thought Thanos as a villain was quite good and interesting.
Yeah, I think Thanos is one of the best Marvel cinematic villains. They really take their time with him and make sure that he's a memorable villain.
Well, and they also make sure that he has clear motivations. So I saw this movie twice. Like I saw it once on opening night, and then my brother wanted to see it, and he didn't want to go alone, so I went with him last night.
It is scary.
Yeah, it's dark. But anyway, but basically he was asking me, like, does it go... Because I was telling him that I think they did a good job with Thanos in this movie, and he was asking, you know, do they explain why he's just so evil? Like, why he enslaves people and why he kills people, because in the Guardians movies they make him out to be this terrible tyrant, but they never go into why, or like why he's doing any of it. And I feel like it does. I told him that I feel like this movie gives us enough motivation to where I understood him and I didn't have any more questions about that. Do you guys feel this movie did the same thing? Yeah,
absolutely. Like the why he wants to do what he wants to do and the why he's acting the way he is very good, very interesting. It's not just I'm evil and I want to destroy the world.
Yeah, he's definitely not a mustache twirler, right? And they give him also some human sides that make you kind of identify with him a little bit in some aspects of it. So I think that he's a multi-layered villain, like there's...
Yeah, and that's what we spend... That's like the most development that any character gets
Right.
in the movie is developing Thanos and developing the why.
Yeah.
And I thought that all worked really well.
And I listened to an interview with the authors or the script writers, and they said that this is Thanos' movie. You know, there's a lot of other people in it, but they think of it as Thanos' movie, you know.
Yeah.
I think
It's
I
not
will
quite
too when I look back
yeah.
on it.
Yeah. It's not quite a Thanos origin movie, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
So also I think the balance of humor felt a lot more right in this one. I think if you've listened to what I was just talking about with Guardians 2 or in our previous Marvel Universe catch-up episode, I was talking about how I didn't like all the humor that was in Age of Ultron. Like, I thought they tried too hard. I thought they did a lot better in this one of choosing when to have a humorous moment, as opposed to in other films. I feel like they were putting in as many as possible. That way, if one missed, it's okay because you still have like 20 more that might hit. Yeah. So what did you guys think about the humor balance?
I 100% agree with you, and I think that comes from a different voice being in charge of this particular Avengers movie. The first two were very Joss Whedon-y. The first time, I found it to be pretty charming. The second time, I'm with you on the humor. It started having diminishing returns on me. I don't think it bothered me as much as it bothered you, but I certainly appreciated this one a lot more. I like the grim tone. I enjoyed the humor when it was in there. It felt very restrained, which is, like you were saying, not something Marvel is always really good at doing.
A lot of the humor comes from the pairings. The characters that they put together can interact really well and play off each other in such a way that the humor feels natural, you know, and it feels like a next step that makes sense. You know?
It's coming from the characters more often than it is the characters trying to make jokes that are just trying to be funny, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, I think, and it's not even humorous, but it's just an interesting character pairing like you were talking about, Chris, which is that I think a lot of one of their main complaints with the Doctor Strange character was that he feels just like a magic Tony Stark, like personality-wise, at least at the beginning of his origin tale.
Yeah, that was my problem with the movie. For like the first third of the movie, I didn't think I was going to like it because it felt like a retread of Tony Stark.
Exactly, but I think they have done a great job in Thor Ragnarok and in this one with making him feel like a character that has gone through a change, someone who does not feel like Tony Stark. So in this movie, whenever Doctor Strange and Tony Stark are having their conversations, it's fascinating, you know, because you're like, oh, this is the character that I thought was like Tony Stark. Now that they're together, I can totally see how they're different.
Yeah, they separate them for sure.
Yeah, and I think they did a good job in this one of making each character feel like they had their own voice and their own personality. And I think they did a really good job with like the tone balancing, like we talked about in the preview episode last week.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, has such a different tone from Doctor Strange or Iron Man. It's
and
so
apparently,
wacky.
Yeah, and apparently James Gunn wrote the Guardians dialogue in this movie so that it would still have that same voice.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But it feels like they fit in the same universe, too. You know, they don't feel out of place next to Iron Man, right? They feel like they fit and they all could exist in the same universe, right? Or did you guys feel that way?
No, yeah. I think it totally works. Like, I think the best thing that ever happened to Thor was giving him Rocket and Groot.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was all pretty enjoyable. Him meeting the Guardians in general, like one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie was the interaction between Chris Pratt and Thor.
Oh, and
like
how
when they
insecure he
meet
was?
Each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought that was really good. And one of those things that's like it's perfectly born out of Star-Lord's character, right? Because in the Guardians world, he's kind of like the handsome leader and, you know, number one. So to come up against Thor, it's all very funny. I'm trying not to be, you know, give away anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk more about those situations because I think there's some other great humorous moments that are born out of character.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to dive into a little bit more of those with you.
Before we get into spoilers, I wanted to talk a little bit about the special effects and what you guys thought of those, like Thanos and some of the special effects that happened in it. How'd you guys feel
Absolutely.
about that?
Was Thanos a CG character or was he in a prosthetic?
Both, I believe.
Okay.
But I think mainly CG.
But the fact that you have to ask that question is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
No, he was mostly motion capture, I think, especially in the face. But if you look back at Avengers 1 and you look at that after credits sequence with Thanos, and if you look at Avengers Infinity War, you can see that they were well aware that Thanos was not a very cool-looking villain. So they gave him pores, they gave him like blemishes, they gave him sweat and tears and fine hairs that you can see like against the sunlight. So I think he looked great. And like there's parts where like people are fighting him and they are literally like touching his head and arms and stuff, and it looks like skin touching skin, you know? I think it looks a little goofy when he walks sometimes, or maybe when he like tries to do action oriented things. But that's true of any like completely CGI character, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I really liked Thanos. I thought Thanos in general looked really good. There were some moments where he interacts with other characters that don't look as great, and I think you're right about that. But I think for the most part, being able to see Josh Brolin's face in Thanos and his performance coming through really added to that character, to the character of Thanos. And
yeah, like it feels like a Josh Brolin performance, you know? It feels like, even though we never see him in the whole movie, it feels like I saw a Josh Brolin performance.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So,
however, at the very end, they have not really hit the man in mechanical suit, because there's a moment at the very end where there's a couple of characters that are in mechanical suits, and it just looks bad. And it's not that I'm willing to forgive it, but there were certain moments where things didn't look good. They haven't gotten that man in mechanical suit to look right, and it just
especially around the head.
Yeah, so I think without spoiling too much, but in other films they've had this where, like, say for example, Iron Man doesn't have his helmet and it's a head, but then there's the big mechanical suit, and sometimes that just looks funny.
Yeah, it just doesn't look quite right.
It looks like a little head floating around in a cartoon frame.
Yeah, they don't look like they're part of the same thing.
Yeah. So I did want to talk and ask you guys what you thought about the big action sequences, like the big set pieces, because the one thing that I will say about the movie is that I thought almost all of the action and set pieces were pretty unremarkable. Like, I don't think they were very interesting or unique in any way. And that might be because I'm coming off of Doctor Strange, that has like really inventive, like visually creative set pieces. But these just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I'll push back. So I would say the opening sequence where the ship comes down and you have Strange and Stark and Spider-Man fighting in the city, I would say that's pretty interesting. But I think the fight scene that really worked for me, none of the stuff in Wakanda, I think I agree with you on all of that stuff. None of that stood out to me. That all seemed pretty standard, I guess. Mm-hmm. But the scene that really worked for me, that I remember as it was going on, I thought to myself, I appreciate this. And that is when all the Avengers on Titan are working together to take down Thanos. And I think all that's fascinating. I think that's one of the more interesting fights we've seen in all the MCU.
Yeah, I agree that is the best one in the movie.
What do you think, Chris, about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about too much without spoiling, but I think you're right. The Titan fight was my favorite. Spider-Man with his quips as he's going through portals was really funny, I thought. But yeah, I really enjoyed that one. As a team, like watching them work as a team was good. And then I think there's a moment at the very end of that fight where Thanos does something extremely powerful that I felt was really cool. And then the fight that happens after that is really good too.
Yeah, I guess like I found myself the most bored during the action set pieces because they were kind of far and few between. Like they had them, but there was plenty of time where we weren't in the action stuff, and all of that stuff I enjoyed immensely more.
Yeah, I think that's probably true of most Marvel movies, though. I don't think any of these movies have coherent, interesting action. I would say the first Avengers is the best one about that, and maybe like Civil War. I think those two are the ones where like the action's really fun. Usually, I feel like it's kind of a means to an end. It's just that part of the story that like every one of them has like that third act action sequence, Yeah. And I don't think most of the directors that have come into the MCU have a real clear vision of how to film action.
Yeah, I mean the action is filmed okay. I always kind of feel like I'm waiting for the action to be over so that I can see what's happening next or how it gets resolved. Like more so than I'm like actually find myself invested in the action.
Sure, that makes sense.
And it's not the biggest complaint in the world. Like it's kind of a thing I would like it to be better, but it's not so bad that it's unwatchable.
I would like Marvel to hire an action director, you know? I would like them to hire
Like John Woo.
Yeah, or like maybe not John Woo specifically, but like I don't know, like the guy who did The Raid, Gareth Evans.
Didn't he do Monsters and Godzilla?
Gareth Edwards.
It's Gareth Evans or Gareth Edwards.
I think Gareth Edwards did Godzilla and Monsters.
Yeah,
so
I know. I always get those two mixed up. I'll probably edit
it's understandable.
That down. Yeah, but like maybe that guy, someone who's known for their action sequences. The people who are doing John Wick.
Right.
I would like that. It's a minor complaint because, like you said, the action's just whatever. You're waiting for it to be over so you can get to the next like conversation or the next beat. But I like action movies, so I would like more creative action in the Marvel front. That's one thing I will say about this movie that I was a little disappointed in is I still don't feel like they've topped that opening New York action sequence from Avengers 1.
The one shot,
Yeah. It's like not a real one shot, but it gives
Right.
the illusion of a one shot and it gets you pumped,
Yeah, I agree that nothing's been as good as that.
Yeah. So final thoughts before we move into spoilers, and also most people are going to see it in theaters, but do you guys recommend going to see it in theaters or waiting to watch it at home?
I'll go see this in the theater with a big audience. I don't know if you can still do this since the first weekend's over, but I'm sure it's going to make a ton of money. Yeah, the reactions of people after the movies was really great, I thought.
Yeah, I would say it makes the whole experience enhanced. Because like even the jokes that don't land for you personally, they're going to be a little better, I think, if you can see them land with other people.
Yeah, I agree.
The action sequences where you're supposed to be in awe may work better if other people around you are in awe, I think just seeing people who are really enthusiastic about the movie can only benefit the experience, assuming they're a well-behaved audience and they're not a bunch of assholes who talk, which is always a gamble these days.
Yeah.
But
I feel like by going at 10:30 in the morning to see it like I did, I've got the people who were really wanting to see the movie and were all very invested in it and not talking through it or being bad movie watchers.
Yeah, both times I saw it, the audience was really receptive. There were gasps, and I'll say in non-spoilers, but there were audible reactions multiple times throughout this movie where I could tell that it was having the desired effect on a lot of people,
Yeah.
So did you guys have any moments of applause in the theater?
Yeah, when Captain America first shows up, there was a burst of applause.
Okay. There was one, and I always find those like really, really interesting to see what people applaud and why they applaud in movies like this.
I had someone in my second screening applaud when Wakanda popped up on the screen, like that big statue of the Panther.
Mm-hmm.
But like it was just one guy, and I don't think the applause caught on, so it died down real quick.
It just feels really awkward.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, oh. Never mind.
That's funny. So are y'all ready to move into spoilers?
Yes,
I am.
Yeah, so did you guys know that this was the prequel to The Leftovers?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is...
No, Chris, tell us more.
The Leftovers was apparently part of the Marvel Universe. Everybody disappearing,
Yeah.
and then
That'd be
afterwards
amazing.
you watch The Leftovers. And
They just didn't, they all thought it was like, they were all wondering what the event was, but it was just Thanos somewhere.
Yeah, on the other side of the world.
And wasn't it only like 6% of the population in The Leftovers?
Let's not get into the details,
Instead of
Justin.
50?
I remember whenever like everyone started disappearing after he snapped it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, who's going to disappear on, like the planet with Tony, like Titan? And I was like, this is way more than half.
Right.
Well, sure, yeah. I don't know that it's an even half.
Well, that's
like
random
in
for you.
every single place. I think it's in total it's half.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it
That's
could
the
have
randomness.
it could have wiped out the entire Earth.
Right,
You
and
know,
another planet wouldn't
and-
get any.
And yeah. So
Yeah, it's a cool idea to do it that way. That's kind of what I mentioned in the MCU preview episode. I was like, I don't think it's a geographical closest to you half. I think it's like you snap your fingers and half of everything dies. And I was right.
yeah, I think we were all right on a lot of things actually.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
right on a lot, but we were wrong on a lot too.
Yeah, I was wrong about... I thought for sure that we'd have at least Tony or Captain America die in this one.
Yeah,
I
was
thought
like,
you guys
I think it's
you guys
gonna
said
end-
that they would die in this
I
one,
did.
and if not this one, one of them at least would die in between this one and the second one, which was like is kind of the unofficial part 2.
What I said was like it's gonna have a really big downer ending, and it's gonna be basically a cliffhanger. And Chris was like, I don't think
disagree.
so.
Yeah,
I don't
I thought it
think
would
it
be
will
more of
be. I mean, it might have a downer ending. It might end on a funeral.
Oh yeah, he did say that. I remember. I think we
Yeah.
all said. Did we say that we thought Thanos would be successful?
Yeah, I think we
And
addressed
that's
it
where
for
the
sure.
downer
Yeah.
would come from. And personally, I said that Hawkeye wouldn't be anywhere in this movie at all,
And you were right.
and I was right. So
But he's going to be
Yeah.
a big part of the next one for sure.
no, I'm calling it now.
No, he won't.
I'm doubling down.
Doubling down.
for
Just
the
keep-
next one. He's not coming back in that one either.
Yeah, I do like what they did though, because now we're back to the original heroes, except for Rocket Raccoon stuck around too. But
And
we're-
Nebula.
Yeah, Nebula. But for the most part, we're down to the original Avengers, and I feel like it's a really good place for them to hand it off to the next generation in the next movie. I think
Right.
that'll be
Well,
interesting.
now, I mean, they even teased it at the beginning of this one. Now it's going to have to be the point that we talked about in the preview episode where Steve Rogers and Tony Stark come together, because it's obvious that if they are separate, they cannot do this.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys this about the deaths. So we are all in agreement that all the people that disappeared are not dead. They will be reversed, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
I
that
don't
Black
think there's
Panther
any other
money
way
and
to see it.
Spider-Man money. They're not going to
Right.
leave
Yeah.
that on the ground.
And then, so what I'm worried about is that they reverse any of the deaths that happened before that. So, for instance, maybe Vision or Gamora, Loki. Like, I think that those people are dead. And then, or I'll be upset if they're not. Does that make sense?
I agree. I think that Gamora won't be dead somehow in the end.
So, yeah, I've been reading up a little bit on that one because I agree with you. Like, someone needs to stay dead, otherwise the universe doesn't have any stakes.
Right.
But I think they... I'm sorry, go on, Justin.
I would argue that it already is super close to the point of not having stakes, which is one thing that I don't like about the ending of this movie. That, you know, you've said that it was, I don't remember your exact word, but you said it was ballsy, I think, maybe, or something that's similar to ballsy of them to end the movie this
ballsy,
way.
bold, something like that.
Yeah, and I've seen other people call the ending like audacious and impactful, and like I just couldn't disagree more. Like, I feel like just the way that these movies are set up, and if nothing else, the fact that they've announced sequels to characters who died at the end of this one, that like it just doesn't have any impact on me, because I feel like, okay, this isn't what's actually how this is all gonna end up. These characters aren't dead and gone forever.
Right, but I also would argue that I don't think they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes or anyone's eyes in saying that this is a permanent state of affairs. I don't think the intention is to walk away thinking everyone actually died.
I do think that there are people walking away thinking.
There are people, and that's what I mean when I say it's bold and ballsy or whatever I said. Like, there are a good chunk of people who don't know what sequels are planned. You know, like, my dad doesn't know what's going on, so when he sees this movie, he's not going to see the ending coming, you know?
Yeah.
So
we
there
pay
are
attention a
people
lot
like
closer
that.
than
Yeah, there are people like that. But yeah, we do pay attention closer, like Chris said. But what I would say is it's one thing to, like, know a sequel's coming, but it's another to make the biggest movie ever with all these people and then not give closure. That's what I mean. Not so much like I think they're actually trying to trick somebody, but there is no closure. This is part one of a part two after they specifically said it's not going to be part one of a part two. And they put all their money on it. Like, that could have backfired. I don't know. It could have backfired. I think they were pretty comfortable enough in their own skin where they knew it wouldn't. So I kind of see what you're saying. Even that being said, there have been sure thing movies before that have never ended quite this in quite this way.
Yeah, I think that I don't feel cheated by the end of this movie. You know, a lot of times you watch a movie and then there's a cliffhanger and you're like, you feel cheated, like you have to watch the next one. I feel satisfied by the ending of this movie. It being Thanos' journey, Thanos won, and then the last shot of him smiling by the side of the lake. I feel satisfied by this ending and this movie as a whole by itself. I feel like it, has a beginning, middle, and end, and it's not just like the cliffhanger. It's not stay tuned next week. Does that make sense? Like on a TV show, it'd be to be continued, and then you wouldn't feel satisfied. You're like, I got to watch the next episode in order to feel satisfied. But did you guys feel satisfied by the ending?
I mean, I feel like I'm not dying for part 4 yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like it was satisfying in that sense as far as like Thanos goes. And I think ultimately you're right, Mike, that's not necessarily what they're going for, the end of like, oh no, everyone's dead and they're never coming back. I think it is more of like, how are they going to get out of this one? How is this all going to be undone?
Yeah, it's like the
but
same
I
thing
still
with
think
Lost.
that's weaker.
It's true, but it's the fun of conversation for a year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is what you liked about Lost, right? Like it's like the week to week of like guessing and where they're going to go with it. Once it's there, it's never as satisfying as speculating about it, but they gave you something that's going to be really interesting to speculate on, that everyone's going to be able to participate in this conversation for the next 12 months. And I think that's a ballsier, cooler, bolder ending than anything they've given us so far.
And it'll be interesting because we have 2 movies before the next one comes out, so it'll be interesting how much those other 2 movies hint at the next movie.
Right, it'll be fun to think about it and and try to piece it all together before it happens.
Yeah, I think what kind of just turns me off about the whole thing is, like you were saying before, about there being consequences and stakes, is that there were a few other things that happened in the movie where I felt like they tell me something is going to happen, but it doesn't end up happening, and therefore it feels like what they've said previously was only there to like make me doubt as an audience and didn't actually have any weight. And the big examples I can think of is that Doctor Strange tells Tony Stark and Spider-Man that if it comes down to it, he won't give up the Infinity Stone. He will let both of them die before he gives it up. And he goes back on that. And I don't know that we got enough to really understand that. I think by the end of the movie, there's more to it than that.
I'm going to push back there. I think we got plenty. So he tells him that because he knows that Thanos can't get the Time Stone under any circumstances. By the end of the movie, when Doctor Strange gives him the Time Stone, it's because he went and saw 14 million, however many possibilities, and saw that the only one where they come out of this alive is where Tony Stark's not dead, and Thanos wins in the short term.
Right, but doesn't that come about whenever Doctor Strange is about to vanish? He tells Tony it was the only way. Like, isn't that moment, which is like later on?
There was 2 moments.
Yes, but I think the moment when he gives Thanos the stone and the moment he passes away, I mean, there's probably not that much screen time of Tony, and I don't know. I feel like it's pretty obvious as soon as he started to give it to him, though.
Yeah, so when he gives the stone to Thanos and Iron Man says, "Why did you do that?" He's so upset. And then Doctor Strange says, "We've entered the end game." And I think I know, at that point I know that Doctor Strange is manipulating things because this is the only way, is how I felt about it.
But couldn't that have also been referring to the fact that Thanos still needed one more stone?
Well,
and
sure,
that was the end game. The end game is going on for him trying to get that last stone from Wakanda.
So maybe the one where they survive, they give the Time Stone. He still gives them the Time Stone. He goes, and for some reason they are able to destroy the Mind Stone. So we don't know that they're still on the path of Doctor Strange's one timeline where they survive. We don't know that they're still on it, but I think that was why Doctor Strange gave it to him. I think that's pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll know more in Avengers 4, but I don't think that's a flaw in the movie so much as it's one of the mysteries we're supposed to be thinking about for the next year.
Maybe so. I guess it was frustrating to me at the time. And so that's an example of how it was frustrating at the time. The other big one, and arguably bigger one, is when Thor goes to open the iris of the thing so they can forge a new weapon for him so he can like replace his hammer with the axe. Basically, Peter Dinklage tells him that if he does that, he's going to die. It's suicide. But then he does it, and then he just doesn't die. And so it's like there are these things that are set up and like limits and rules that they give you and tell you that throughout the movie, or here and there at least, maybe not throughout the entire
That one
movie,
I agree with because that whole plot is stupid.
Yeah, I think that whole thing should go.
Yeah, his interactions with Rocket Raccoon and Groot are really good, but the whole series with Peter Dinklage isn't quite there. There's like one joke that I really liked. It's when Peter Dinklage is like, "If you do this, you'll die," and then Thor says something like, "Then I die," and he's like, "Yes, that's what it means to die." And I thought that was funny, but other than that, there wasn't much to it.
Yeah, I didn't like his accent he was doing or trying to make his voice all deep. It sounded like he was doing the same thing Star-Lord was doing earlier in the movie.
Yeah, it was kind of comical in the wrong way.
Yeah. I do like the plot of him, while everyone else is trying to fight Thanos, him going to create a weapon that could defeat something like Thanos, and that being the reason he's gone for so long. I do like that idea on paper, but the execution of him going to that forge and meeting a giant Peter Dinklage and holding the gate open while the star powers the forge and all that nonsense. I agree. It was really trying, and I think it could have gone. But I think from a storytelling standpoint, it makes sense that a character has to go somewhere on a journey of their own to get a device that is capable of defeating an enemy as powerful as Thanos.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like there could have been something less complicated. Like, I basically just didn't like that he shows up there and, well, now the thing's broken and we have to convince Peter Dinklage to even, like, make a weapon because he's sad because he lost his hands. And it's just, like, introducing all of these other problems that just kind of eat up time that aren't really affecting the main story of Thanos.
Yeah,
like, I wasn't that big.
Could have gone towards Cap.
I did really like the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like the moment where Groot makes his arm the
axe handle.
Yeah, makes his arm the handle for the axe. I really enjoyed that, where he finally puts the video game down. But ultimately, you're right. You guys are, on point.
And the biggest sin of it to me is, like, saying, like, if you do this, you will die, and then they do it anyways, and then just don't die. Like, feels like just an issue that I have with superhero movies in general. Is, like, it's bad enough that you know that in the end of the movie, generally speaking, the superhero is never going to die. But, like, that's just kind of, like, almost pointing it out to me, like, point blank.
Yeah, that one I totally agree with you on. The Doctor Strange one I do not, because I think that's part of the point. This one I am more sympathetic towards because I had the same thought. Like, as soon as he's like, I'll have to hold it open, I was like, this is just...
just get it over with. Let's
spinning our wheels.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you might be right about the Doctor Strange one in the end. I think by the end of the movie, I guess it's just how I felt at the time, was like another thing that someone said they would never do or isn't going to happen. I think it does make sense in the end, though.
Well, in that sense, though, but I agree, because I had the same initial thought the first time I saw it. It took me a moment to think back on earlier in the movie. So I would also argue that is the Russo brothers giving their audience the benefit of the doubt, which is something that these Marvel movies don't usually do, right?
Right, I agree.
So I would actually consider that to almost be a plus now that I'm thinking about it. I think they left enough plot threads hanging to where the conversation for the next 12 months will have plenty, going on.
Agree. Another thing I wanted to kind of talk about to touch on is the opening sequence and Hulk that kind of both go together. But so if you watch Thor Ragnarok, they just saved all of Asgard, right? And now Asgard's all dead.
Only half of them.
It looks like it. Oh yeah, that may make sense. Where was Tessa Thompson? She didn't show up.
She was on the half that left.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, what did you guys think of that opening sequence with Hulk and Loki? And
on a personal level, I just generally do not like Hulk. Like, I don't know what it is necessarily, but just every time he's in a movie, and like Thor Ragnarok is probably the movie I hate the most from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a lot of it has to do with how much Hulk is in it. So when Hulk showed up, I wasn't very thrilled, and whenever he was gone and wouldn't come back throughout the rest of the movie, I was pretty happy.
Yeah, I was going to say. What about you, Mike?
I like Mark Ruffalo quite a bit, so I'm always down for Mark Ruffalo to be in the scene. I think the beginning of the movie worked really well because up to this point in the MCU, Hulk has been kind of described as like their secret weapon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's smart to have Hulk fight Thanos first thing, so that way you get like the scale real quick, right? You're like, okay, this is how powerful Thanos is. He is not scared of Hulk, and Thanos' henchmen aren't even scared that he's scared of Hulk. They know he's going to have fun with it. So it's like a Dragon Ball Z moment or something, right? Where it's like it only exists to put in perspective how bad the bad guy is.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. And then I also
it's a smart, economical way to do it.
Yeah, and then of course, he kills Loki, which is like things are for real here because we're gonna
and
kill
I think
people.
that death will stick. I think Tom Hiddleston's done. They've done everything they can do with Loki.
Yeah, there's only so many times that Loki can be like, "I'm your brother, I love you," and then betray him. That can only happen so many times. Yeah. I liked Loki. I know that Justin doesn't, but
I'm not a big fan of Loki either.
I'm so happy that he died, and I super hope that he sticks so that he never has to be in another film again.
I think it'll stick, and I also actually think the Gamora will stick too.
I think Gamora should stick if this world is to have any stakes, like we were talking about earlier. But I think she will likely come back, and I think it will be okay as long as they do something and make that part of like the plot, right? Like she's trapped in the soul gem or whatever or she's trapped in the soul plane or whatever. So we have to go in there to get her back. Someone has to trade their life for hers in the fourth one. There's been rumors that, now that we know what the Infinity Gauntlet can do and like what you have to do to use it, that one of the Avengers is going to have to sacrifice the other one in order to wield the Infinity Gauntlet in part 4,
Yeah.
So it's possible that someone goes and gets Gamora out of there by trading their lives, or she gets out of there some other way. But I would prefer that she stay dead. And then in Guardians 3, the family dynamic could be explored, like what does this family do when they've experienced loss?
And I think another interesting thing that would happen if Gamora stays dead is that her sister takes her place. And that would be an interesting change.
She
to
could
the
still be the
dynamic.
straight man to Peter Quill's silliness.
Right.
But you could cut out the romance angle and keep it fresh.
Well, we've also kind of established that people exist beyond life. So some of the characters who've died previously, we've seen them show up again in like the astral plane or whatever in Black Panther. But also
right.
in this one specifically, we have Red Skull, right? Is that his name? From the first Captain America? He
Right,
makes
but-
an appearance back, and he's kind of a spirit, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he ever really died.
The Tesseract
It
banished
teleported him.
Yeah, it
like
teleported
if
him.
you look at, and I know this because I
okay.
actually watched all the Marvel movies again recently, right? And I actually watched them in chronological order. So the first Avenger was actually the first one I watched. And at the end of that movie, he's fighting like Red Skull in the plane, and then like a portal to space opens up above his head, and he just gets like beamed out of it. And you never know where he went. And then you never really focus on it because Steve Rogers just immediately has to deal with like the crashing plane in Antarctica.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think I assumed that, but one, because it's been a while since I've seen the first Captain America.
Right.
But also, I thought he had like kind of
He did seem kind of wraithy.
robes that, kind of trailed off into nothingness, so it just seemed kind of ghostly.
It's true, it did. And it could be because he's clearly been alive for a long time on this planet. But I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool. Did you guys actually like that when he showed up?
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I thought it was a cool twist.
Yeah, it's a surprise to me.
Yeah, it was a fun surprise, I think, but I hope that more comes out of it. Like I wanted it to mean something greater than just like, hey, here's
I'm
Red
sure
Skull
he
and what
will.
he's doing. Yeah, I think so too. Which is why I was thinking they were maybe setting up something with like more afterlife stuff.
I bet he'll be in Avengers 4 if they have to use the Infinity Gauntlet again.
Mm-hmm. And so do you guys, I guess it's apparently not actually Hugo Weaving. It's a Hugo Weaving impersonator.
It didn't sound like him to me.
Yeah, it didn't sound quite right.
No.
Yeah, do you think we'll get another showdown between Red Skull and Captain America?
I doubt it. I think Captain America will be long gone by the time Red Skull enters the picture again as a proper villain.
Yeah,
if that's going to happen.
Yeah, not in a movie, but just like at some point in Avengers 4. Like you said, if they have to go back to him to do something with the gauntlet.
I can't imagine Steve Rogers leaving Earth very much.
Maybe not.
He doesn't have like a space suit or any, you know what I mean? He's
think
more
that,
of like the ground crew.
Yeah, but I think that might be how Captain America dies in the fourth one, like sacrificing himself to get the Soul Stone.
Oh, definitely, maybe, yeah. But I think Iron Man would have to kill him if that's the case, or Tony Stark would have to kill him, and that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think they're setting up something like that because they have the line and then the recurrence of it where he says, "We don't trade lives." So I think they're really setting up that sort of thing to happen in the part 2.
Yeah, the question is it going to be Steve, Tony, both, neither?
Hawkeye?
Yeah. That'd be funny if they're like, Hawkeye, we need you.
Hawkeye kills one of his children, pushes the child into the pit.
Oh, my.
Yeah, it gets real
Wow,
dark.
that is dark.
Means to an end.
We'll see. Stay tuned. So I guess we can talk specifically about Thanos and his reasoning now that we're in spoilers. So basically his reasoning is that there's too many people, the universe is overpopulated, there's not enough resources and things to go around for everybody. You have people who are starving and barely have enough food. So his whole idea is if we kill off half of the people or half of like the beings in the universe, we'll all suddenly have plenty, which I find really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be too simplistic had it not been for the fact that he is so old because of whatever he is, that he actually saw this happen to his own planet, right? And he even talks about it to Doctor Strange. He's like, this happened here. It used to be beautiful, but we were overpopulated, and I told them my plan, and they told me I was a madman. So in that flashback alone, we get information that he was considered mad amongst his own people, that he's had this idea for a long time, and B, has more conviction now that he's seen it actually take place.
Right.
And so I think that information all breadcrumbed out like that does wonders to actually giving so much motivation to everything, all the evil deeds that he's been doing,
I agree, and I think Thanos is a really good villain. I've said that. There is, however, one problem with his logic. So he gets the Infinity Stone, and he wants to wipe out half the population because we don't have enough resources for half of them. But at the point where he has the Infinity Gauntlet, can't he just create resources for more people? As opposed to, why does he have to wipe them out? Can't he?
I don't know. That might be true in the comics, but I would argue in the movies they've never created things. They only usually destroy things, trick people.
Yeah, I mean, I think
make time travel happen.
It's just a nitpicky thing.
It's possibly a nitpicky thing if the rules of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are that with the Infinity Gauntlet he can do that, which I'm not sure he can, is what I'm saying. Maybe in the comics, but they've changed a lot of things and a lot of rules from the comics. And I would argue that nothing in the movie so far has indicated that he is able to create more resources.
Yeah, I'm really unclear on the rules of the Infinity Gauntlet. I put it down to me not watching the Marvel movies very much and having seen most of them only once and in theaters, with the exception of all the ones I've caught up on recently.
Right.
But I wasn't sure, is it like your one wish when you snap your fingers comes true, or is it when you snap your fingers half of existence disappears? I'm not totally sure.
It seems like each of the stones, because every time he uses it, not snapping the fingers, but every time he uses it to do something, whichever stones he's currently using are lighting up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know which stone it is that could create more water, or which stone it is that can create more food.
The reality stone?
No, that can just trick your brain, can it? I don't know.
That's
the Mind Stone.
I'm unclear.
What does the Reality Stone do?
I don't know.
That's the one that he used whenever he created the fake collector area set up with Benicio del Toro.
That's the Mind Stone.
No, the Mind Stone's the last one he got from Vision.
Yeah, right. It's confusing.
Yeah, I would also agree with you that the rules of the Gauntlet aren't necessarily clear. I don't necessarily care because I think I enjoy it. He snaps his finger. It looks like the glove is pretty messed up after he does that. It looks like maybe it's been used up. But we'll see in the next episode what happens.
Yeah, I just hope that we get more clarity on that sort of thing.
And it might be if one of our Avengers ends up wielding the gauntlet, we might get more clarity. I mean, how far back can you rewind time? Why doesn't he just rewind time all the way back to when his planet was fine and then eliminate half the planet?
Right.
What are the rules? I don't know.
And it could also be that. Well, it's they did kind of address that in Doctor Strange, and I guess Thanos probably wouldn't care about the rules, but there are time travel rules, which is that when you do it as little as possible because it's a big deal.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while since
you splinter things, and the further back you go, the wider things can separate from where they currently are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Thanos, from his perspective, wants to help the universe, not fuck it up more.
Right.
And that goes to show, I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit, because Thanos, from his point of view, he's not even doing that evil of things. From his point of view, he's doing a good thing, right? And when he fights the Avengers, he's never vengeful with them. There are plenty of times where the Avengers, he should have just killed them, but he's not even trying to. He wants random, dispassionate, fair genocide. He doesn't want to take revenge. He's not a vengeful guy. You know what I mean? A lot of times he's making them just fly away or make them go straight through him. And a lot of times he just leaves them. When he's done with the fight and he's got what he wants, he just leaves them there standing around. He doesn't even care enough to straighten himself out and be now I'm pissed,
Yeah, he respects Tony Stark, and leaves him alive. And
right. And he doesn't get mad at Gamora when she tries to kill him. He's just oh, you do still care.
Yeah.
You're crying. You know, so it's like people trying to kill him, he does not take personally. And I think that's actually pretty interesting. And it seems like, you know, the part in the trailers that they had in there where Steve Rogers grabs the glove, you know, they kind of remove some Infinity Stones in the trailer to mislead you. Mm-hmm. But, like, in the context of the movie, it doesn't seem like Thanos is, like, actually being stopped by Steve Rogers. It looks like he's, like, looking at this guy being like, I admire his spirit. Punch. You know?
Yeah,
like,
this guy's got more oomph than I expected, but, you know, I can still clean
right.
the floor with
Even
him.
Scarlet Witch, after she destroys the Vision's Mind Stone at the end, he's like, child, I understand. I know you're sad. Believe me, I get it. And he just reverses time real quick, you know? He doesn't even, like, do anything to her.
Yeah, it's actually surprising how powerful Scarlet Witch is. She may be the most powerful of the bunch. You know, she actually kind of puts up a fight at the end.
Well, because she's created from the Infinity Stone, so she has, I think, in theory, as much power as, like, Vision will. I guess maybe not as much, but who knows, you know? She's powerful.
Yeah.
So I think one of my favorite characters was Rocket Raccoon with Thor, and how Thor calls him Rabbit the whole time. But I really specifically like the moment where they're flying towards their hammer place, right? And Rocket Raccoon's like, time to be the captain. And he goes and talks to Thor and tries to actually have
He's
that.
like, dead brother, huh?
Yeah.
That's annoying.
Yeah. I thought it was both funny and touching at the same time. I don't know. How did you guys feel about it?
I think it worked. I think Chris Hemsworth did a good job in it. I like Thor's character a little bit more now.
Mm-hmm,
that he kind of balances between the lighthearted joking when he's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, in the old one, he was very Shakespearean, you know? Mm-hmm. I like that Thor actually has, like, mannerisms where it's like, oh, I'm sad. Time to deflect it with, like, oh, I'm fine, you know? It only makes me stronger having everyone I know dead. I've been alive for a long time, and this is just going to make me even stronger. But, like, his performance, you know he doesn't believe it, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think Chris Hemsworth did a good job. Did I feel anything? No. But I didn't expect to. You know, I don't think I was ever going to.
Yeah, I don't think I felt much of anything as far as, like, being emotionally attached to anyone. I'm trying to think, like, I guess one of the bigger moments is, like, the death of Vision, and I don't feel particularly attached to Vision.
Nah.
I think the death that I thought was the best was Spider-Man with Tony Stark, where he's like, I'm sorry, you know, I don't want to go. I thought that was, I mean, even though it's going to be reversed, and I know it is,
right.
But I thought that was the most enjoyable death.
Oh, definitely. I think their relationship is one that I find to be very emotionally rich, that's kind of started in the later phases of the Marvel movies, which is like the Tony Stark, Peter Parker relationship.
Yeah. Civil War to Spider-Man.
Civil War, Spider-Man, and this movie, their relationship is really good. And you could tell Tony cares a whole lot about this kid as much as someone like Tony can care about someone else. And that whole scene where Spider-Man is disappearing, Tom Holland nails it. Because, like you said, even though we're not really scared that he's not coming back, there's something really scary and sad about seeing a teenager beg for his life and being scared. Yeah, and like something that instinctively awakens inside of you that's like, I want to protect him.
And apologizing to Tony Stark, you know, like, I'm so sorry, man, I failed you, you know, and that's even sadder, I think. But
yeah, that part worked, and it could easily have not. Like, it could have easily been, you know, felt kind of manipulative, but I think the performance from the kid makes it work.
Mm-hmm. And Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. I would say that even whenever Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, is disappearing, Tony Stark just begs him not to go as if he has any say-so in it, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I just thought that was really
The other one I kind of liked was Drax. As he started to disappear, he's like, Quill? You know, like, I thought that was good.
Yeah.
So when Okoye, Black Panther's Kingsguard person's on the ground, mm-hmm. and it's like right after Bucky just disappears, and you think like T'Challa, like, which is Black Panther, comes around the corner, and he's like, here, and like you think she's about to disappear because he's about to help her up, but then he disappears, and like her face whenever she's like horrified about what's going on, I thought that was really good. It was kind of like just a really quick fake out because she's on the ground and you think she's not feeling good.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't expect that one to happen.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good, especially since Black Panther's making like all the money in the world right now.
Yeah, it's still in the theaters.
You're like, he's not dead.
Yeah, Black Panther was number 5 this weekend in the top 10. The thing I'm most looking forward to, and I love that Rocket Raccoon stuck around because I think it's going to be really fun to have Rocket Raccoon with the original like 6. I think that'll be a fun combination.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see Rocket and Steve Rogers hang out.
Right.
One thing I did like quite a bit was like how frustrated Tony Stark was trying to come up with a plan with this set of Avengers, like the Guardians in particular, because like they're not as smart as the Avengers he's used to working with. He's just not used to like lowering his standards quite so much.
There's this moment where he's just quietly dumbfounded, and it's like a 2 or 3 beat, like one, before he talks again, because he's just so dumbfounded at what's happening.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great.
Yeah, my favorite moment of the whole movie is when Chris Pratt and Thor meet. I guess Star-Lord and Thor meet, and Star-Lord starts doing the kind of impression of Thor, like he's trying to like lower his voice and be like, he's like, "What are you talking about? This is how I talk." That was all pretty good.
I like when Thor's like basically just catching him up on what's going on. He's like, "Yeah, my father trapped my sister in hell, and I had to defeat her." And then Star-Lord's really insecure, so he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I met my dad, and I had to pretty much kill him," which some people could say was probably harder than killing your sister. Like,
yeah,
most likely.
I just did the contest for like being the coolest or most handsome or manly. I liked it.
And I appreciated how they were joking about how Chris Pratt's like one sandwich away from being fat.
Yeah, and he's clearly not.
Yeah,
he's clearly in like super good shape.
Yeah, it's just funny.
All right, is there anything else that you guys have?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Mike?
No.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay, I have one more then. One more thing.
Twist.
The end credits scene. I really want to make like a petition or something to like Hollywood screenwriters or whoever's in charge of this, but I would really like to stop using the joke where someone's about to say motherfucker and then they don't get to. Because I think that one has been done to death and I hate it.
I agree. I think they were just like, "Hey, it's Samuel L. Jackson. Let's get him to do this thing that he does."
Yeah, it should doubly go for Samuel L. Jackson. They should maybe never let him say motherfucker in a movie ever again.
I would agree with
even
that.
Like just say the whole word.
Yeah,
like it's like the oldest joke in the book at this point.
Yeah, he could have just not said anything and just been like, "Oh no," and that would have been fine.
And it kind of kills the vibe of the movie a little bit too. It feels a little bit off tone of everything that's come before it, which is okay because it's an end credit scene.
What if he had said "gosh," and then he didn't finish that?
If he just said "oh shoot,"
"oh dad gut."
Yeah, it just feels like at this point it's kind of like it feels almost on par with like "take my wife, please," to get that joke. I don't like it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's it. So, what's the website where you can start petitions? Because I'm going to start one.
Petition.gov.
Change.org.
Change.org. Yeah. So look for our change.org. We'll link it in the show notes.
Now you really got to do it,
I'm going to do it. I'm really going to do it.
So normally at the end of each episode, we have a question kind of related to the movie about our favorite something or another. This time we decided to pretty much keep it Avengers themed. So guys, what was your favorite comedic beat from the movie? Like quick line, joke, whatever.
Yeah, so my favorite actually comes from Drax, and I don't know if that's because I didn't like him so much in Guardians 2, and his humor was like way more on point in this one, but I really liked the moment where Star-Lord is asking Thanos where Gamora is, and he says, "Where's Gamora?" And I believe it's Thor that's there. Oh, it's Tony. He's like, he's Tony. I've got one better. Who is Gamora? And then Drax, who's like laying on the ground, says, "I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?"
Yeah. His delivery is great.
It was so good. Like I laughed out loud. It was one of the moments that got a real big laugh out of like not only myself, but I think that like killed like the whole audience too. So I just love that one.
Yeah, it's like in a heightened scene of intensity. So it's just completely, I don't know. It's just completely off, like unexpected. It's great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one as well.
Yeah. It's all right, Chris. What's yours?
So mine is Rocket Raccoon when he meets Bucky. And so he goes to Bucky and he's like, "Is that gun for sale?" And then Bucky says no. And then he's like, "How much for that arm?" And Bucky's just in disgust walks off. And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get that arm."
Yeah.
Yeah, which is perfect because that joke is so born out of character for Rocket, you know?
Yeah, he's been collecting those different appendages in the movies and everything too. So yeah,
Right.
perfect pairing there.
Yeah, so that is just like a perfect opportunity seized in the script form, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's on par with the rest of development, like doing the whole like hook and crane stuff and like with like building up to like Buster's hand being gone. It seems like they've been planning it for years to like have that one joke pay off, you know?
Yeah, which is perfect, yeah. And then, so I guess my favorite scene is pretty close to that one. It's actually whenever Thor and Rocket and Groot show up to the battlefield, and Thor introduces Steve Rogers to Groot, and he's like, "I am Groot," and he's like killing like 5 guys when he's doing that, and then like Steve Rogers, always the respectful, polite person, is like, "I am Steve Rogers," and he like points to himself, like to his chest, and it's just so charming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed that one. So is that it?
Yeah, I think Chris Evans's beard is very good.
Oh, it's the best.
It's so combed and clean, and
Yeah.
What do you want, Chris?
I did want to say, I love the way Captain America was introduced. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but behind the train tracks is his shadow. You just see his shadow and the way he's introduced. That was one of the times that there's an applause. So I really enjoyed that. What did you guys think about it?
yeah, I was excited, but I was also promptly disappointed whenever he was sidelined the whole movie. But
Yeah.
that's okay. We still have Avengers 4, and now that we've cleared some room for him, I expect Steve Rogers to be front and center.
Yeah, I think that's definitely gonna be him and Tony's movie.
Oh, I hope. That's what's going to have to happen for me to be excited, I think, for this one. I think this one will be worse in retrospect if like they bring Gamora back in a lame way, or if Chris Evans' cap retires and I don't get closure with that character.
Right.
Right. And I did want to say too that I had a couple of friends who've listened to like the Marvel preview of Infinity War episode, and they were saying that they really hope that Infinity War breaks my range of Marvel movies only being either like a 4 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 at best, you know? And I will say that depending on what happens in the second part of this, I do feel like this movie could easily move up to an 8. I'll say it.
Wow.
Because I think there was a lot. There's really enjoyable. There's some things that, like, if they don't go far enough or don't like dive into certain things further in the next movie and things that like don't pay off, it could get less good. You know, I think we've talked about some of those things.
Right.
But I think there is potential for this one,
Wow.
for me to climb into the 8 range.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, bold statement. I think regardless of your feelings on the series as a whole so far, this one just, I know you said you didn't think it was very bold at the end, but I think the tone and overall vibe of the movie feels different than the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
In a good way.
This is kind of The Empire Strikes Back, right? I mean, you guys would agree with that because
Yeah, I think that's a pretty
downer.
common comparison being made
Yeah.
now, but I
That's
think
an
that's
easy one.
Yeah, it's the most appropriate tone-wise. I think it's a little bit more grim in its tone than Empire Strikes Back, at least from the opening scenes. Like Empire kind of gets grim about halfway through when you realize kind of what kind of movie you're in for. This movie feels grim from the get-go.
Yeah.
When you see like Loki get his neck squeezed and things like that.
Yeah, it's a more successful impending doom than the other films have, I think. Like it actually feels like the doom may come.
Which I really enjoy, actually. I think mood is a huge factor in my enjoyment of this movie.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
the Russo brothers nailed it as far as that goes.
Yep, for sure. All right, so that does it, I think.
Nice.
Yep. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
So stay tuned. In a couple days, we'll be releasing a bonus episode on our most anticipated movies of the summer. We each chose 5 movies we're looking forward to, and we're going to go ahead and talk about them. And we think that'll be a pretty fun episode. we'll have another bonus episode, which is an interview with indie filmmaker David Franklin. So be on the lookout for that as well. And also, we did go over and rank every single movie in the MCU so far, and we all posted our rankings on cinelinks.com along with their other writing staff. So take a look at that list and go ahead and compare your own favorite movies in the MCU with ours and let us know what you think.
Yeah, and if you want to make fun of me about my list and my rankings, as the writers at Cinelinks have already started to do a little bit.
Have they? Good.
Yeah.
Good.
With good reason.
Maybe. That's debatable. Comment on the article and tell me why I suck. And also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, where you can tell me the same thing. You can join our Facebook group and talk film and TV with us at facebook.com/groups/casualcinecast.
/Justin Sucks.
Yeah, that might not take you there, but
it'll be fun to type.
Yeah, if it makes you feel better, type it. Or if you want to email me directly to tell me I suck, you can do so at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.